It's been such an incredible year for Ultima. I can't believe it's only a year since we shot the power of Carp. It's really been a fantastic experience and has helped us in the development of not only existing products but new exciting products, and that's also come from the involvement of the existing team of consultants and some of the great new names that have joined us, like Mark Hutchinson, who's helped with the development of Power Carp XR, Lee Jackson, of course, who needs no introduction. The one thing that stands out that people are hungry for knowledge about rig design, they want to know more. So we're very fortunate to have one of the leading exponents of rig design on the team in Steve Renyard. We have the expert here who is able to demonstrate that. He's been shooting various bits of DVD around on some of our test days. Therefore, the concepts now come together that we should put these together in one DVD.
Rigs and terminal tackle is one of the most important parts of carp fishing. Everybody wants to know how to tie the most effective rigs and the best way to present their baits. One of the best in the business is Ultima consultant Steve Renyard. Let's go and have a word with him about the importance of carp rigs. Hello mate, how you doing?
Hello Pete.
Tying something up?
Yeah, just having a little play around, like I always do, sit here playing with rigs. That's, you know, it's always been an interest of mine, as you know.
Well, it's something we're all passionate about rigs. I think you have to be with carp fishing, but you've sort of developed a name for it. It's really interesting for me that your passion to sit and develop some of the things that you've developed. Just how many hours do you spend doing it?
I mean, I would say, you know, I mean, it all started from, you know, the early 80s when I started carp angling, and we used to use very, very basic things. There was no knowledge about, we didn't have the likes of DVDs and you know, magazines. We had to literally, it was word of mouth, or you had to trial and error and make things. So it stemmed from, you know, probably I'd say once I got into like the withy era. I went up to Withy Pool in 1987, that's when I met you.
True.
We were using the bent hook rig then, you know, which is a lot of rigs have actually been developed on top of that to, you know, to simulate the same sort of effect that the bent hook rig had. And that's where the withy came from. And as the years have gone on, products have been developed. I've been fortunate enough to be involved with, you know, companies like Ultima, where we're developing products, and the interest is always going to be there. I mean, you know, if you break down the mechanics of a rig, there's not one particular rig that's brilliant on all lakes.
Absolutely.
So this is why we've tried to, you know, compile a list of the best rigs that I can come up with for different scenarios, different feeding scenarios. Not all lakes are the same. You might go down to your average day ticket water, there's 1,000 small carp in there, where a basic rig would suffice and you're going to catch. But then we're talking about scenarios where a fish has got to swim 20 acres, find your rig, and if it's doing your rig, you're wasting your time. So, you know, that's what we're trying to put across on this DVD. So it's for everybody. It's not just a beginner. It's not your intermediate angler. It's for everybody. You know, these are rigs, even the sort of the top guys fishing, you know, like things like the hermit rig and the withy pool rig. Those are the sort of rigs that you're going to catch a lot of big fish on, and they will outwit the big fish. If you haven't got a sharp hook, all these rigs are null and void.
Absolutely.
So there's lots of little different scenarios that go along with rigs, but it's trying to put across on this DVD where best to use certain rigs, when not to use certain rigs, and you know, keep it simple unless you have to, unless you need to make it more difficult and use a more difficult rig.
And give the angler an edge.
And having an edge, and that's what it's about. You are competing with human beings. That's what you're competing with, let alone the carp.
Yeah.
You know, that's hard enough, the carp, but you know, it's just having that edge over the guy sat next door to you, and that's kind of where it's always been interesting for me. Bringing the changes, that's what rigs are about. Okay, this rig, slightly different. You've all heard of the withy pool rig, no doubt. Most of you have anyway. It's something I came up with a long, long time ago. This one, it's the same principle as the withy pool rig, using the Hooklink Pro. This is a braided material with 100% fluorocarbon flowing through the inner core. Once you've steamed it, it'll go stiff. It doesn't break like the coated braids do. It's just very, very manageable material. I've just devised a rig, but just using without the tubing. So if you want to water that, you know, where they are gin clear water, the less they can see, the better it is. Basically, what we're going to do, start off, you've got taken off a length of probably 12 inches of the Hyperlink Pro. We're going to do quite a good little knot. I learnt this knot off the internet actually. Just a little overhand loop or a granny knot. Take the end through, and then pull the knot down so it's small, but you still need to feed the end back through. So you've got a little tiny hole. You're going to take the Hyperlink Pro round once, twice, 3 times, and then back through the loop that we first tied. And it's quite a simple knot, but if you're doing loops, it's just a perfect knot. Always try and wet it down. It's a really strong knot, and it just makes everything sit perfectly as a loop, as you can see there. So you just cut off the tag end. So effectively, all you've got is a nice loop to the end of the Hyperlink Pro. And the clever part, and this is what makes the tubeless withy what it is because it's doubled up there, we're going to put this through the back of the eye of the hook. You need to squeeze the ends together, just so it goes through. And as you can see, just through the back of the eye like that. And then take the hook just like so. So you've got no knots to the actual eye. It's just looped over. And that's all part of. You'll see in a little bit what I mean by the withy part, because we're going to steam it into the nice sort of semicircle, and then open up the Hyperlink Pro in there and give ourselves a flexi part. And that's the beauty of this material. At the moment, that's sitting like that, but once we've steamed it and we've held it straight, it will sit parallel. They'll run parallel with each other. Literally, all you're doing, taking an oval ring, put it onto your hook, one of the little Nash teardrop stops, put that onto your hook, and then stop it around parallel with the point of the hook, or just a little bit above it. This is how easy this rig is to tie. And people think that the withy rig is a really difficult rig to tie. It's actually not. It's really, I mean, I can tie them in about a minute. So, you know, sat at home, you're probably 20 minutes, you've got, you know, 15 rigs tied, give or take. So all we're going to do now is take the Hyperlink Pro and fold it below the knot, because what we're going to do is feed out the fluorocarbon. You've got to squeeze the material together, because you're trying to get out fluorocarbon out of the end of the out the side of the braid. And I don't know if you can see that, but that literally, there's a little tiny piece of the fluorocarbon folded over what I've bent over, and all I'm going to do is snip that. And now we've got a flexible part, as you can see. And that's the real key element to this material, is that you can do that anywhere along the Hooklink, so you can create whatever sort of rigs you want. But for the withy, we're just going to have, all we need is that little bit there that we're going to put the shot down and curve it with a kettle. Right, we're just going to show you how to steam the tubeless withy. I'm going to be using, just for, you know, safety purposes, you know, you've got young kids and you are working with a boiling kettle. So what I'm using, solar rig cone, and just hold that over the steam. You can see that's nice and safe. And the fluorocarbon inside the Hyperlink Pro will now be starting to stiffen up. And that's all you need. The key part of this, don't rush and take that off as soon as you've taken it away from the kettle. Leave it for about 20 seconds, and then that will it'll cool down itself, and the fluorocarbon will stay in the shape that's required. You can get the hook out, and basically what you've got, turn that kettle down now, there's a lovely little curve. You can set this however you want it. It doesn't have to be as long as that. If you like a rig to be closer to the ground, closer to the bottom, you can do a shorter loop knot. You just got to play about and see how it goes. And then basically all we're going to do now, put the bait on and cast that out. That's literally ready to go. And that, as you can see, just by the curve, you see how that grips hold of my finger. So the carp, if they come in from any direction, if they're touching, it touches the bottom lip, it will sit on the bottom lip and grip. And that's what the curve's about. It's just a very difficult rig for carp to deal with. And like I say, it's less obtrusive than using shrink tube. And obviously, it's cheaper as well for you guys. So what I'll do is I'll show you how to put a bait on in a different way now. We're using the Nash bait floss. You're going to do an overhand loop and then a loop behind it, and then just go through the loop twice. So you've created kind of a slip knot. Take your boilie. This is the fiddly part. Put your boilie in the centre of the ring. It's the ring of the bait floss, if you like. And then just ease it down. And then all you're doing is pulling it on really tight. And what you'll find is that you'll have one end that is really fixed. The other one will still slip. So it's that one you need to get hold of, chop off the tag end that slips. And I normally just give it a tiny little blob, just to stop it in case it does want to slip. And one of the key parts of the withy rig is using an oval ring, and when you tie the knot to one side, and I'll show you why. If I tie it up to start with, like I'm right in the centre of the oval part, the hook will not sit properly. It's just the percentage. If you can see that now, the hook's sitting slightly at an angle because the ring, if you can see through there, the ring is sat at a funny angle. So all I'm going to do is just slide the knot over to one side, pull it nice and tight, chop off the end again, blob down the end, and then you'll see now that that is sat perfectly. You see how the ring's sat? It's just sat, and the rig just sits much better. All you've got to do then, put on your split shot. You can put that straight onto the Hooklink Pro because it's a tough material. If required, a little bit of putty, and that's the finished rig. And I've caught a lot of fish, especially abroad on this. This has caught a lot of fish using the withy without the tubing. It's just a very effective rig. And that's as simple as that to make. It's very, very easy. And once you've made a few and you've got used to steaming it in the right place, you'll see how effective it is. And that is the finished thing. And it does exactly what it's supposed to do, catch carp. This is a rig that's been designed by my best mate, Dave Fuage. Very forward-thinking angler. He just wanted a rig that he could adjust the hair on and manipulate the hook up and down the Hooklink. So if he wanted to fish 2 baits, 1 bait, without making new rigs, I'm not a great fan of like the stick mixes, but a lot of people are. And you could get this actually incorporated into the hair rather than actually down above the hook. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to show you that. We're taking the Hyper Silk. You can actually use like the Hyperlink Pro, which is the stiff material, but just for ease of illustration, we're going to use Hyper Silk, which is a normal braid. So you take off length of braid again, about 12 inches, a little tiny oval ring, and you're literally going to secure the ring onto the Hyper Silk. 5-turn grinner knot. 2, 3, 4, 5. slide that up, lick that down, and then put the ring through a baiting needle just so you get a nice secure knot, really secure. Because when you're playing the fish, all the pressure is going to be down on this little ring. You'll see why. It'll unfold as we go further down with the rig. So basically, what we've got is just a length of braid, as simple as that, with an oval ring attached to it. And that's what we're going to attach the bait to. The good thing with this rig, you can use whatever hook you want. The fang twisters, because I like the way that the angle of the eye, just to give it that little bit of extra flip and turn. Take about 3/4 of an inch silicone tube. Make sure you spit down the tubing. We're going to take a splicing needle and just thread it on. It's quite simple. Thread it onto the splicing needle, just like so. Just so you've got it past the gate. There's a little gate on these splicing needles that will close once we're going to put it onto the hook link. So we take your hook link material and put your hook on. There's no knots, like I say. That's the whole idea of it. So you're going to put the braid through the back of the hook, the back of the eye, and that's basically, it's just going to hang there like so. And then the clever part, now thread back on the silicone tubing onto the hook link, slide it down in place. This is where it could get a little bit fiddly. It's just getting it over the eye of the hook. But if you take hold of the ring swivel in one hand, the straight part of the hook, and hold it nice and tight, it's quite easy to thread on. And you can literally manipulate the hair to whatever position you want once you've actually got this silicone over the eye. And that's it done. And like I say, you can adjust, if you want to fish single bait, double bait, you can adjust the hair to whatever you want to put on there. And when you're actually playing the fish, that pulls down to the it slides the silicone back down, pulls down to the eye, and you're playing the fish on that. Just to attach the bait, I mean, you guys will use whatever you deem necessary, or whatever type of bait you're fishing with this type of rig. If we take some bait floss, put an overhand loop in the end, just so you can attach either a boilie or pieces of corn, a stick mix. You know, I mean, you could put a stick mix right the way up through the oval ring, but I just think that would give the hair, would make the hair just too long. So you can either put a single boilie on that, tie it straight on there. You've got a basic sort of rig, but adjustable. So if you want to put 2 baits on, you can put 2 baits on. Or take a stick mix, put it on sideways. Go through the bag sideways. Make sure the gate is closed. Just like so. Take your boilie, put your boilie on as well. If you got really clever, you could actually put your boilie through the centre of the stick mix and have that in the centre. But just for this sort of purpose, I'll show you what we're going to do. Secure it with your boilie stop. And as you can see, what you've got is just basically your bottom bait, probably with a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch hair, and then secure it to the oval ring. I would do 2 knots on this, and the second knot, double it over. Double your knot over, just so it doesn't slip. And that's it, nice and secure. And then slide your hook down to the ring, and you've got quite a nice little presentation with a stick mix round it. And like I say, I'm just showing this for illustration purposes. I don't know whether Dave, this is Dave's little rig anyway, I don't know whether Dave has done that sort of thing. He probably has. But that's, you've got a nice anti-tangle rig. You've got a bit of stick mix, a bit of attraction around your hook bait. That will sit on the bottom really nicely. Once that's broken up, you've got your boilie sat amongst a lot of well, there's not a lot of food there, but a lot of attraction. And that basically is the slide-in hook rig, which is quite natty. And as I say, you can use that with the Hyperlink Pro. So if you want a slightly stiffer material and just have that part, you know, you can use it with a double bait, single bait, whatever you want, triple bait even, you know. But the beauty of that is that you can put on whatever you want onto it, and it's adjustable. And once that's dissolved, you hook the fish, that slides down to the knot, and then, you know, you're into a very secure, hopefully a very secure hook hold and a nice fish for the album. And that's Dave Fuage's rig.
So talking about mainlines, Lee, you've been with us for getting on for a year now.
Getting on for a year, yeah.
And you started off using Power Carp,
Yeah, well,
fluorocarbon coated.
Undoubtedly, I mean, Power Carp is Ultima's flagship product, really, you know. There's a lot of anglers out there don't like clear lines. It's a psychological thing, but they just don't like it because it's clear. So it was my idea initially that Ultima, we bring out Power Carp in a different colour. And I mean, not only have they brought it out in a different colour, they brought it out in what's called what do they call it, Stephen?
Distressed camo.
Distressed camo.
Distressed
so
camo,
got
yeah,
even better. I mean, undoubtedly, I mean, Power Carp has really sort of taken the market by storm. A top quality fishing line in every conceivable thing, you know, every conceivable way. But the Power Carp Ultra is basically got the same characteristics as we all know as an existing Power Carp. But what dyeing it has actually done is actually made it smoother, so therefore you can cast a little bit further than the existing Power Carp with it. And like for people who don't like clear lines, that's the one.
Yeah, well, it just blends into the background. I mean, for me, I'd love Power Carp and what it does. 18% stretch. Yeah. It's abrasive resistant. It's got everything, and it casts beyond belief. But like you say, I never thought of it before, but using a green light, it's given me more confidence.
Yeah.
I've been using it over the whole sort of latter part of the summer into the autumn. I've used it on shallow lakes, gravel pits, weedy waters. I've had fish weeded up. It's come back without a nick on it. I haven't had to cut any off.
Yeah.
It's performed admirably.
Yeah.
And for me, the confidence is in the colour.
That's right, yeah. I'm exactly the same.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got no problems with using clear lines whatsoever, but a lot of anglers, you know, a lot of anglers don't like it, you know.
And then you've got some anglers, we're trying to cater for everybody.
Yeah.
Some anglers like the white line.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've had no problem. I've landed fish to 63 on the Power Carp 12-pound, but I'll be sort of plumbing for the Power Carp Ultra.
Yeah, another thing we've done as well, I mean, there's a lot of people out there, you know, prefer nylon hook links, and we brought out like Power Carp Clear as an hook link material. I mean, you've got the best of both worlds there, really, and you're fluorocarbon coated. And
well, as most people know, I'm a fanatic about fluorocarbon hook links. Used them since, you know, sort of the invention of fluorocarbon. But I think this, you know, we know Power Carp sinks, so it's kind of creating the same job, but you've got a tougher material.
That's right, yeah.
And it's on a protected spool, you know, rather than carrying around a big spool, bottom of your rucksack. I'm terrible, world's worst. Bottom of my rucksack, you'd find chicken bones and all sorts.
Yeah.
So that in a protected spool can fit in your tackle box. I think it's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, it's perfect.
And the other thing with that is you've got that guaranteed strength that you've got with Power Carp.
Yeah.
You know when you're fishing with Power Carp as a mainline, it's not going to let you down. The breaking size on the spool is a breaking strain that you get with a knot in it, and that's going to be exactly the same on the Power Carp hook length.
Well,
so it gives you
I've taken it a stage further, Pete, and actually had that tested, and it breaks higher with a knot than it does than the breaking strain states. So if you're using the main line and then that as a hook link, you've got the ultimate sort of, you know, strength wise, you've got the ultimate hook link and line material.
Well, you're not going to get that situation where you're playing a fish and then you get that little rub and that on a snag or whatever, and it's in your head like, oh, I've got to be careful or whatever. Power Carp as a mainline gives you that so much confidence, and to have that equally in a hook length.
Yeah, I think.
Whereas if you was using a pure fluorocarbon hook length, you've got little doubts and that, you know, is it going to hold up? Is it? You know that's so strong.
Well, if you got the guys that are making a lot of hook links out of fluorocarbon and can't really afford it, that's the other way. You get 50 metres on a spool, you can make a lot of hook links out of that little spool.
It's true.
You know, and I split the last thing on Mainlines is, well, I hand it over to you, Pete. We're bringing out the ultimate casting line, and it will be the ultimate casting line.
Yeah, we've been putting Mark Hutchinson, who you all know. Mark just casts such ridiculous distances.
I can beat him underarm.
Well, I'd like to see it, but it's just he's unbelievable.
Yeah, he is,
and how he does it is such fantastic technique. And he's been testing a new Power Carp XR, which is extreme range casting line. The whole idea behind it was to develop an out-and-out casting line, but to have all the attributes of the fishing line, the carp lines that we all want. Mm. So it's got to have the strength, the abrasion resistance, and the softness and the castability, which you can't get. So it is going to be.
I think most casting lines on the market are pre-stretched monos. So we know they cast, they're very supple, but they cut.
Yeah.
And what we try to create, which we think we've got, which we know we've got, is a line that won't break. You can cast it beyond belief, and it'll come up against gravel bars and it won't let you down.
Absolutely, and it will come in as part of the Power Carp family, which is renowned for strength and performance, and anglers actually get what they're paying for, the top end product.
Yeah, totally agree.
I think all aspects are covered, aren't they, really? You know?
Yep.
Yeah. One other thing before, on that Power Carp Ultra, which I've found, and I was really quite surprised when I was fishing, because the lakes I've been fishing have been very weedy this year, is it seems to really disappear more than the clear one. Whether it's because the line's green and you're in a green environment, you know, with the weed and the colour, but on all sort of substrates, on all lake beds, it just seems to vanish.
Well, I think with the change in the weather, we're getting weeds right the way throughout the winter.
Yeah.
So you've got a green environment. And that's why I was really pleased, because springtime you've got all the new fresh weed of all different colours, and that's where the distressed camo feature comes in, because it will, if you've got dark weed, light weed, that will just disappear in amongst all of that. So you're fishing throughout the year with a camo line that sinks.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Next rig. This is one, I've been a fan of stiff rigs for years and years and years. The Ultima Power Stiff, unbelievable material. I've utilised this in quite a few different rigs. This is the main component of this rig. And the idea behind the rig is normally you can't get a stiff rig to flip and turn. I've tried for many years. You know, they do catch just because of the angle of the hook, the stiffness of the material, but why not make it better and have a rig that actually flips in? So I've called this one the flipping stiff rig, just because I couldn't, words failed me, so that's why I called it the flipping stiff rig. You cut off literally whatever length you're going to use. I mean, I generally try and make the rig about 7 inches. A lot of people use stiff rigs a lot shorter, especially if you're putting them in bags. Just cut off a length for the Power Stiff, overhand loop, just so you can secure your boilie on. Simple as that. Make sure you cut off the right end. There we go. And then we're just going to secure a nice bottom bait on there. For this one, I'm using the Richworth XLR8. Take your hook, and this is quite a key component. I'm using the Fang twister hooks, which have got an inturned eye. Take a little bit of the silicone tubing. You're literally just going to cut off a few mil. And this is going to be really difficult to show you, but it's as small as this. I'll put it in the scissors. It's as small as that, and that's going to be on the hook shank, just to secure the hair down, which is quite a key component for the rig. So thread it down the hook link, like so. So literally, you just got a little bit of silicone down the hook link, and then we're going to put the hook on. So you put the hook on upside down, facing the hook point is facing the boilie, because it's going to turn on its axis once I get to the bend of the hook. As you can see there, and that just gives it stability of the hair, so it's not moving all over the place. And as you can see there, it's as simple as that. Basically, take the Power Stiff, put it through the back of the eye, and then secure the hair in the position that you want it. You don't want a long hair with a stiff rig, purely because they're going to suck it and it's job done. As soon as the boilie enters, you want the hook point entering as well. So you want it quite close, the boilie quite close to the bottom of the hook point, of the hook bend, sorry. And just do 3 turns round the shank of the hook, take the tag end. Now it doesn't matter, because we're putting a little bit of shrink tube on here, it doesn't matter that I've put it through back to front. So when you're playing the fish, the pressure is not all on the front of the eye, because you can use this rig with a heavy fluorocarbon as well, like the Power Link 18 I've used it with. So I take it out the back, because I'm putting fluorocarbon on, I'm going to bend it. You see immediately already you could get away without using the shrink tube, but it just aids it. We're going to take some of the diffusion shrink tube. I would say about just over ½ inch. Thread it down your hook link, and you can put this quite a way down the shank of the hook, past the knot, and all you were doing is just going to follow the pattern of the eye of the fang twister, the same sort of trajectory that eye is going in. We're going to follow that with the shrink tube once we're steaming it. So now you've done that, you can literally take what length you want. Yet again, I've been using this knot on most of the sort of the fluorocarbon rigs. Take your granny knot, one granny knot, and then all we need now is a ring swivel. It just gives the stiff rig a little bit more flexibility. If you tied that straight onto a normal swivel, there's chances that can get caught up, deems the rig, it could end up sitting up out the water. So you need it on a ring swivel and the loop. It's just it just gives it a lovely hinged effect. Put on your ring swivel, and then take the tag end back through the loop you've made, the granny knot. Then depending on what size loop you want, feed it down. That's about right, probably about 1 inch. Feed it down, and then just take the power stiff and go round twice, because it's quite a strong material. You only need to go round twice. Back through the little eye of the granny knot, wet it down, and then get hold of it with your finger or something like a marker pen or whatever. Pull it nice and tight, and you've got a fantastic loop knot. Take off the tag end. It's a nice stiff rig. It's nothing it's nothing too unconventional, apart from the fact we're securing the hair down on the bend of the hook, and all we're going to do now is steam the shrink tube in the position, and then I'll show you how it flips and turns. Try and use some pliers, chaps, because when you're steaming you can easily burn your fingers. And what I normally do, just put it on for a little bit, just to make the shrink tube really shrink down to as small as it will go. Take it out, dry it, and now we're going to start to curve it. And all we're doing is putting a little kicker on. Like I said, just follow the same trajectory as the eye of the hook, and you won't go far wrong. Don't get too close to the kettle. You don't need to. Literally, just hold it there for 20 seconds, and you've got probably one of the ultimate stiff rigs. Perfect for winter time, when the fish are really fine stiff rigs come into their own, up against snags, winter fishing, especially with the clear material, and the fish aren't moving that much. So we can let that go now, and you can see how that sits. That sits very, very close. Just manoeuvre the hair so it makes the hook sit nice. And basically all that does is flips and turns, and you can see how quick that is. To get a stiff rig of this sort of magnitude to flip like that, it's quite clever. And the fish, literally, they're going to come along, and if they're in, they're nailed to the bottom, over hemp, over spod, the fish aren't going to be upping themselves, moving on to the next bait. They're coming out the edge of the snags, they're literally pinned to the bottom. They're going to be just literally mouthing over baits, and this is where this one comes into its own. Like I say, in the winter time, over snags or over hemp, literally it's in the mouth, it's all done. And if it flips as fast as a braided rig, you know the mechanics, you should hook the fish in the bottom lip. Happy days, it's caught me a lot of fish, and it will catch a lot of fish. But just to, you know, I've used the stiff rig without the benefits of fixing the hook like that and then the tubing, and it's still caught fish, but it's caught them randomly in the scissors, at the top of the mouth. This one is aimed to catch them in the fleshy part of the bottom lip, and it will give you a better secure hook hold, and it'll also, mechanically, it'll up the amount of takes you get. And that is the flipping stiff rig. Right, this rig is a replication of an old rig called the swimmer rig. Used to catch an awful lot of fish. It's probably not the most complicated rig to tie. I'm using the Hooklink Pro with this one, and you'll see why. It's got lots of benefits. This is the one with the fluorocarbon that runs through its core. All we're going to do on this particular rig is poke out about probably 3 inches of the fluorocarbon. It's as simple as that. Cut the fluorocarbon off, and make sure you hold it near the end, because you don't want it sliding out the wrong end, if you know what I mean. So now what we're doing is we've created there a hinge part, okay? We may have to take a little bit more of the centre part out, just depends how good this knot goes. You're taking the Nash ring, just a round ring, and tying it to a 4-turn grinner knot. And that's all you need. There's not a lot of pressure going to be on the knot of the ring, and you'll see why, because it's actually going through the hook. So we do that 4 times. 2, 3, 4. Get hold of the little ring, pull the knot up, and then gently start to slide it down. And you will need a baiting needle or some kind of instrument to put through the little ring to actually get this. It's quite important that you get the knot really, really tight. It's quite a crucial part of the rig, so that knot has to be really tight up against the ring. Chop off the tag end. Simple as that. So all you've got is a supple part of the Hooklink Pro with a ring tied to it. So the next thing we do is we take our hook and we thread through the back of the eye the Hooklink Pro. You'll notice we've still got that supple part, and we're going to pull the ring quite close down to the bottom of the hook. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start wrapping the supple part around the knot. And then once we've got 4 or 5 turns, take a few underneath. It's almost like my basic complicated rig. And we've still got the supple part there. Poke that through, back through the eye of the hook. And as you can see, we've created a lovely little ring right close down to the eye of the hook. And what this tends to do is, as you can see, it drops. So when the fish take it in, it's going to claw along the bottom of the fish's mouth. And that's the whole idea. You can fish this one very close to the bottom, so you're almost fishing a bottom bait. And we've got that nice little flexible part for the pop-up, so it's only going to sit ½ an inch up off the bottom. So that's basically the rig tied. Put on your ring swivel. I'll probably make this one about 8 inches. Depends what you're fishing over, but if it's nice clear, I would say 8 inches is perfect. Through the ring swivel, I'm going to go through the knot again. Nice little loop. And then 1, 2, 3 times around there. I've closed that loop up a little bit too small, but I think we'll get that through. That's it. And then just ease that down nice and gently. Get hold of the two and pull the knot nice and tight. And the tag end. We formed a lovely little loop. Chop off your tag end, and all we're ready to do now is pull the little ring up a little bit so it's sitting away from the hook. As you can see there, that's running parallel with the hook. Just take a little piece of super glue and just dab either side. Careful not to put too much on because it will come through the eye of the hook and make the supple part stiff. So you don't want that. You want it to be supple. Yep, so basically once you've put the loop in position, you've got your nice loop to your ring swivel. That can go into a lead clip or a helicopter rig, whatever sort of lead setup style you like. And as you can see, the way that drops that's the whole idea of it. So it drops in the bottom lip. We'll secure the bait to it. Yet again, it's a pop-up. You can use that with a bottom bait. It will work mechanically better with a pop-up. So I'm securing it just with a loop knot to the pop-up. Pull it up as tight to the ring as you can go. Secure it on twice, like so. Right, trim off your tag end, and there you go. You've got a lovely little swimmer rig. The only thing that you need to put on now is a split shot. Depending on the size of the boiler you use, I know a size 1 will hold these 14mm ones down. The Hyperlink Pro is a really rigid material. It's so you can put that straight onto the Hooklink, and then you've got a lovely tiny little rig. It's very cute. You know, you've got wary carp that, you know, they don't want to pop up, you know, sort of 2-3 inches off the bottom. That will just hang down there, and that, as you can see, that hook. And the idea is that it swims around, getting hold of the bottom lip. And that's why it was called originally the swimmer rig. And that, once you've steamed this straight, literally, I don't need to show you that. You can just hold that, steam it straight, because it's got fluorocarbon inside it. You've got a hinged stiff rig that's got a pop-up and a hook that just sort of hangs down. It's a difficult one for a carp to deal with, and I've caught lots and lots of fish on this one, you know, and I've used it with other materials, but this is probably the best material to use it with, because you've got all the stiff element and the supple all built into one hook link that's not going to peel off, and you know, you can use that again and again. Tie on your new bait and off you go, and that is the modern swimmer rig.
So Lee, we're just back really from Medine World Carp Classic.
Yep.
One of these enormous French venues.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, thousands and thousands of acres. You're fishing right at the horizon. Mainline braid.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I used years ago, to be honest with you, and I was sold on it. I mean, it absolutely. I mean, at the time, I thought it was like using a new rig, because there's no stretching braid whatsoever. You know, when a fish picks up your bait, it gets the resistance from your end tackle and your rod and reel and everything, you know. The main advantage with braid is because for its breaking strain, I mean, it's extremely fine diameter, so you can use like in this case 18-pound braid, which is about the thickness of an 8-pound mono. So obviously casting, it's really good. And like fishing the big French waters, you know, where you're boating baits out 250 metres, 400 metres even, I mean, because there's no stretch, it's such an advantage. You know, you've got instant contact with the fish, and bite indication is a lot better. I mean, the main disadvantage of a lot of braids is they float, which is fine if you're fishing over obstacles and everything, but really, you know, in the ideal situation, you want it to sort of sink down to the lake bed, and this one's perfect. I mean, the material it's made of, by its nature, it does actually float. So the only way they can make it sink is like weave an absorbent material within it, so when it gets wet, it does go down. Yeah. And but in a lot of cases, it then becomes too thick. Whereas this is, you know, it's got the absorbent material in it, but it's still quite nice and thin, so you can still cast it a long way. Yeah, and I actually think you get more bites because of it. I mean, another big advantage with braid as well is fishing against snags. I mean, because there's no stretch, there's no chance of the fish, you know, getting. I mean, you provide you on the ball, you know, with a rod.
Yeah.
There's no way the old fish are getting the snags. But I'm sold on the stuff.
And Steve, taking braid further with Ultima products is the spot and marker, which we talked about launching when we did the Power Carp DVD.
Carp, yeah.
That's now been on the market a year. I mean, I've been using it, and perfect for what I've been doing.
I mean, it's very similar to what Lee was saying about braids. Obviously, this is slightly different, but when you're marker floating, you want to know every single detail that you're fishing over. So if you're trying to find a bed, you can actually feel it, and it transmits back through the rod, through your hands, and you can feel, you know, with if you're using nylon, by the time you've pulled it and the stretch, let's say you're 120 yards out, you've pulled over your mussel bed. Great, I'm fishing over the top of it. You're not. It's sprung back. You're pulling miles off it. It's just a lot more efficient, like when you're marker floating, knowing what you're fishing over with braid, and obviously because of the diameter, like Lee was saying, you can put this extreme distances. Most of the time, in most circumstances, you can put your spotted marker further than you can your main rods, which isn't a bad thing, because you know you don't want to be fishing further than where you're gonna. You don't know what you're fishing over. So, I mean, I always use, I use a 20-pound variety. Have done for the last sort of year and a half. But I use, in conjunction with it, the Power Braid shock leader. I don't use a finger stool. Just literally whip on about 4 or 5 turns onto the reel of that, straight onto the spod or the marker, onto the braid, and then you've got, that takes up an awful lot of the pressure. I wouldn't actually fish the 20-pound variety straight through, because it will cut your finger. Let's say it's only 4 or 5 turns, literally. You don't have to worry where the knot is on the spool. Cast it out, and it's it goes out exactly the same as as if you're fishing the braid straight through. So
and it's going to take all the shock out of the cast. Repeated casting for spodding,
especially spodding. Like I mean, I use the same. I use like the Shimano spod rod, and I use that for my marker rod as well. So it's a 7.5 pound test rod. But yeah, so when you're whacking that, you actually lose how firm that rod is.
Yeah.
So the initial inertia of the first cast, this will take up, that will take up all the stresses and the strains that you need to. And I mean, I haven't changed mine for like a year and a half. Yeah. Never snapped off. Never,
One thing we haven't mentioned as well. I mean, obviously you're using a spod and a marker rod a lot more than you're using your fishing rods.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so line twist is not a problem with braid, is it?
No,
Which is
exactly.
one. If you're using mono, you'd be suffering.
Yeah, sure.
A hell of a problem with line.
Well, yeah.
twist.
I mean, I always used to use that, Lee, and you come in, you'd have to grab hold of the lead and watch the float go spin round and round and round.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to do that with
right.
braid. So, from that side of it, I've never used braid as a mainline.
Right.
The first time I used braid, one of my mates said, "Have a cast with that," and I was a bit anti it, like you do. You get stuck in your ways as an angler.
Yeah.
He forgot to tell me it was clipped up, and this is how responsive it is. I whacked it. It was clipped up about 60 yards, and it pulled the rod out my hand.
Yeah.
That's how responsive it is, So
no, I've sold it. I mean, the first time I used it, I made a tremendous catch, and for the time, I just couldn't believe it. You could actually, when you pulled it back, your end tackle back, you could feel like a leaf hook on your hook. It was so responsive.
Yeah.
Then I gave it to a mate of mine he tried it. He said, "I can't use this." I said, "Why?" He said, "I can feel too much." And I knew what he meant.
Whether they're mainline, spod and marker, they're definitely part of the carp fishing.
And now are more
armoury.
expensive, but they just don't wear out, do they?
No,
the colour might fade a little bit, but
so they're real value for money as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think once you've invested, you're looking at one spool for your spod and marker rod, and that you don't have to replace that for years.
No.
At Ultima we do actually look for improving things. We're looking at different profiles of the braid and colours and whatever. But that's yet again we're gonna work on that over the next year and see if we can come up with.
And also bringing the diameter of our braids down so you can get even greater distances.
Yeah, at the same breaking strains.
Yeah.
Right, this one's the split rig. You wouldn't have seen this anywhere. I've been messing around, developing different things, having a play around with all the new products I've got to play with, and I have used this one using the Hyper Silk. Or you can use it with any material you want apart from a stiff material. It needs to be like a supple braid, so you can use the Hydrolink Pro if you want to take out a bit of the fluorocarbon. But just for using it in bags, PVA bags or whatever, casting it out, I'm going to do it with braid. Basically, all you're going to do, take a fang twister, yet again with the in-turned eye, tie on the 5-turn grinner knot, just a nice, it's probably the most secure knot you can use for a braid. even fluorocarbon it's quite kind to. That particular knot. Pull the knot down nice and tight, and then yet again trim off the tag end. The reason I've tied the braid on first, as you'll see now, is because I'm going to put a very long D-rig on there. If you put the stiff material through first, it's quite hard to get the braid through. So it's quite an important thing that you put the braid on first and then the D-rig afterwards, because the D-rig, because it's stiff, you can poke that through. So take off a length of the power stiff and then thread it through the back like we would. Going to do a knotless knot and hold it. And basically we're going to go round, literally, if we can get this out of the way, the braid, we're going to go round about, because this is a thicker material, about 15 times. Because what we want is a nice D that runs the whole length of the shank of the hook. You might find it easier, like with a rig tire, just to hold the hook in place, like they do with the fly fishing. Just a few more turns. I haven't actually worked out, but that's going above where the point of the hook is. Take the tag end you've been putting round the hook and actually put it through the back of the eye. I've kinked the top of that eye there, so it will go through. That's it. You've literally, as you can see there, you've got a very long D. Like I say, it's about 15 turns. And once we've secured the D in place, we'll just manoeuvre the power stiff just so it's running parallel with the hook shank. This is why I called it the split rig. So what we're going to achieve is a pop-up with a bottom bait, and they're both able to move up and down the shank of the hook. So you take the tag end, take your tiny little rings, and put 2 of these on. As you can see, now there's 2 on there. The hardest part is getting the second part, the tag end, through the eye of the hook. So what we've done is we've created quite a big D. You're going to pull that bit through, manipulate the stiff material so you've got a nice D rig that will run 3/4 of the way the length of the shank. And what we're going to do now is take the braid out of the way, fold it out of the way, and then hold these 2 together, the 2 tag ends, and then snip it off. We're going to blob these 2, but we're going to actually fuse them together. So they create one blob. As you can see, it's fusing together. And we're just going to leave that one slightly rounded. And then we've got a nice D that's not going to come out. And as you can see by that, if I can split these, this is where I'll give it the name, the split rig. There's 2 rings on the D. And that's the clever part. So what we're going to do now is just put on a little piece of shrink tube just to take down the just to cover up the sort of unsightly knot that you've created. And it also, once I've put the bait on, you'll see why I've created that little bit of tubing, because it sits, the hook sits literally, if you consider my finger to be the boilie, it sits like that away, so the bottom bait sits away from the angle of the shrink tube. So we'll tie off a little piece of shrink tube, cut off a little piece of shrink tube rather, just over 3/4 of an inch. Thread it down and then actually poke it so it's completely over the blob knot. That's it, there. And then we're ready for shrinking again. That's kind of the finished rig before I tie the baits on, and you'll see why. The bottom bait holds the pop-up down, and you've got a split rig that sits absolutely beautifully. And when you hold it up, it's quite funny. The baits sit either side of the hook, but it still flips and turns. When a carp comes across a bait, you know, a single hook bait, if you've got 2 baits there, a bottom bait and a pop-up, it's something he's never seen before, especially with a gap between the 2. inquisitive, they're going to take it. I used it at Frimley and caught straight away on it. Right, so once we've actually secured the shrink tube over the blob of the knot, we're just going to steam it. And you want that kind of angle that you can see there, because the bottom bait's going to sit on this side of it. So we need it away, yet again, using the pliers. Get the shrink tube to melt first, or shrink down, I should say, not melt. And just hold it like that, just in that sort of position. So you've got quite an aggressive angle, and just let the shrink tube, oh, that's nice and stiff now, that's fine. And then put on the baits. Doesn't matter which order you put them on. I've tied up 2 baits already here. There's a pop-up, accelerate pop-up, accelerate bottom bait. Like I say, it doesn't matter which one you put it on, but you've just got to separate the rings, and it's always the bottom bait on the bottom ring. That's the hardest part. Look, they're stuck together, that's it. So we're going to secure this one, the bottom bait, onto the bottom ring, tie it up right up to the ring as close as you can get it. I always do 2 knots, just so you're secure, but just for showing this and time-wise, we'll just put 1 knot in there. But you can put, you know, it is more secure with two knots. Just blob down the dental floss. So that's the bottom bait secured. Take your pop up, tie that one on right up against the ring again. Blobbing process again, just blobbing the tag end. That'll just stop it from coming undone. So it's just a very unusual rig, and the hook, because of the D, the hook protrudes out. So if the fish are lipping it, you've got a very good chance that that's going to lip over the hook anyway. But it will sit down like that, and it's just a very, very unusual rig. And if I show you it as it sits like that, you'll see that it sits sort of one above the other, and you still get. You see how quick that went? You're still getting the flip and turn on it. So pretty important on a carp rig that you've got that flip and turn. As you can see, the baits are sort of side by side. I kind of won't explain what they look like, but I'm sure you've got your own imaginations. And that's the rig. The only other little thing I do with this particular rig, is where it sits on the bottom, is just put a tiny piece of putty onto the hook link, just so it sits down like that. So it's not, it's not going to alarm the wariest of carp. So you've got a little tiny piece, putty, at the smallest amount, just to pin the hook link down. And if you use that in a PVA bag, it's ideal. It absolutely sits perfectly. They don't even have to take the bottom bait in. If they're just going to go for the pop-up, they're still going to get the hook in the mouth. But if they're, greedy, or you want to use, the beauty with this rig is that you can use 2 pieces of corn, secure it with a boilie, or you can use a tiger nut with 2 pieces of corn. The variants are, they're massive. Whatever baits you want to use, as long as you've got a pop-up and a bottom bait, it's a well usable rig that they haven't seen before, especially with this gap in there. They're gonna take the whole lot up. That's the general, And if you balance it, you get a decent sort of pop-up. It's a critically balanced rig. That's a hell of a mouthful for a carp to deal with. And like I say, I've used it, and it's caught straight away. And like I say, the flip and turn, it's just something that I've been playing around with back from the old sort of, the bent hook rig from all those years ago. It's just sort of developing it a little bit further, making it a bit more modern. And I think if you took your time to tie that rig, you'll see the difference that will make over a single hook bait. Because carp, double baits are, they are the way forward on some days. When you can't get a bite on a single hook bait, try a double and you'll notice the difference. It's these little things that you tweak that turn an unsuccessful day into a successful day, and this rig is one of them. So have fun tying that one. Okay, this rig, it's up in the stakes a little. It's a rig I've been playing around with for the last sort of couple of years. Elastic has been used in carp rigs for many, many years. I remember using it back in the late 80s at Withy, just literally whipping on some pole elastic onto a braided rig. You could put it and place it, but casting it was a bit of a pain. But this one is just using silicone tubing tied in with Ultima's Hyper Silk. If I pull that off, I'll show you how easy this one is to, because people think, oh, well, it's irresponsible fishing just silicone as a carp rig. It's actually not. It's quite clever. It's got double the length of Hooklink material, like a braid, inside. So all you're doing, once you've tied the rig, is you're sliding the silicone up to the swivel, and silicone being quite a usable product, it will slip over the little swivel end, and then we've got an elasticated rig. A lot of anglers are on the chod rig. There's no doubt in the chod rig works. If you don't get it right, you lose a lot of fish. There's no movement in the rig, and I think the chod rig, there's quite a few fish you'd never catch on it that would go nowhere near it because they're sucking from a distance. The rig doesn't come to them. You're not going to catch them. So this one just gives you that element of travel, and it's also quite clever. Once it's hooked, as you can see, using the elastic principle again, the point is in my finger and it won't let go. As soon as you start moving a few millimetres, the rig's done its job. As you can see, that's pulled the hook completely home. The carp's not going to get rid of that. They're going to run, and success rate, you will up your success rate. All I'm using, Hyper Silk, the power stiff on the choddy end, but you don't have to use a chod type setup. The main part of this rig is the boom. If you want to use, normal fluorocarbon, normal braid, you want to put it in a PVA bag, you can shorten the boom. It's very adaptable. You're not using normal swivels. I'm using the Nash micro swivel and the micro swivel rig rings. Cut off a decent sort of length, Hyper Silk braid, and tie it onto the actual swivel eye, not the ring eye. Tied on. I use a 5-turn grinner knot normally, but this is not going to come under that much strain when you're playing the fish, because the silicone will take a lot of the strain anyway. A length of Hyper Silk with the swivel tied to it, and then we're going to take the silicone. This is 0.75 silicone tubing, cut off about 3 inches, and then give it a little stretch, just so you're stretching out a little bit of the silicone's memory and making it a little bit thinner. Well, it's a very strong product, so you can give it a good stretch. And then what you're going to do is just blow a little bit of wet down through the centre of the tubing, just so you can get the splicing needle. You can get the tubing over the splicing needle nice and easy. If you haven't blown down it and made it wet, as you can imagine, rubber sticks to it and it's very difficult. So all I'm doing is threading, as you can see there, I've threaded down the silicone onto the splicing needle, and that's the whole sort of 3.5 inches onto probably 1.5 inches. Take your end of the braid and then just literally start to feed the silicone on. And that's it. So you can drop your baiting needle, put the silicone over the eye of the swivel. So we ended up like that. And what we're basically going to do now is just cut off double the length of the silicone where the braid is, and just a little bit more for the knot. So the silicone's probably 3.5 inches. We're going to cut it off about 9 inches, the braid. If you've tied your rig already, let's say you've tied your little choddy, all you've then got to do is tie on your ring swivel. You can make those up at home, tie that on, and then all you're doing is literally squeezing that over, so you've got your elasticated part. But this one, where we're constructing it from new, we're doing it from start to finish, so I've got to show you how to put on the ring swivel as well. Same again, 5-turn grinner knot. I'm trying to hurry along here because this rig is quite in depth, but once you've done a few, you can actually, you probably tie these up in about 3 minutes. And believe me, they're definitely worth construction for you, because you'll see the results. I remember using this one on a feature down at St John's on the linear complex, and I was fishing underneath this bush, and the fish were definitely getting away with it. and they were really cagey. There was about 50 anglers on. It was absolutely packed out. And I put this rig on underneath this bush with a real heavy lead, and ended up with 5 fish for the weekend on this feature. As you can see, I'm just squeezing that along now, and that's as simple as that. So you've now got a very effective carp boom, nice and stretchy. You'll never ever be able to snap the silicone, because the braid's stopping it from going. You know, if I had no braid inside it, it would snap eventually. So that's the first part constructed. Very simple, very easy, and really, really effective. And I think that's going to be here for a long time in carp fishing. I think people are going to use that for all types of different variants of rigs. Like I say, you can use it in a PVA bag or whatever. The next part, just showing you the next stage on. Most of you know how to tie a choddy. We're using power stiff on this one, 22 pound. Cut off a length of power stiff, take your hook, and all you're going to need for this is a little tiny ring. All we're doing, threading the power stiff through the back of the eye, leaving a little tail about so long, and then just start whipping it round. I normally do seven turns, as you can see there. Done 7 turns, and then take the tag end and put it back through the opposite way of the eye that you first started putting the power stiff through. And you've just got to knot this knot. It's as simple as that at the moment. And then all you're going to do, take your ring and put it onto the end up where the bend of the hook is. Take that tag end and put it through, back through the eye. It's the beauty of this power stiff. It's so thin, even in 22. I mean, that's a small hook, and I've got that through with ease. So that's one of the benefits of this particular material, is that it's so manageable. All you do is cut that off. As you can see there, I'm a little disorganised on this one. I normally have everything here to hand, but so you've cut that off, and then all we're going to do, take the long part out and then blob it. We're just going to put a blob on there, and then blob, just so it doesn't pull back through. So you've got a nice little D, as you can see, ready to go on the boom. So we've got quite a length there. You probably have cut off a little bit too much. And all we're going to do now is put this on to your ring about there. You can either do it figure of 8, like so, tied on figure of 8, or I'll show you another little knot that I've been using, which has been quite effective. If you put in a granny knot into the power stiff, depends where you want it, quite a small granny knot. So, just a little loop, and then put your swivel on, take the tag end back through, and then pull it down tight, so your knot's down tight, and then literally just do 2 turns round the length, and then back through the loop that's left. As you can see, there's a little loop there, and then put that back through, and then just pull it down, wet it down. And what I normally do is put this on here just so you don't end up damaging the loop. Put that on the end of there, pull that down real tight, and you've got a lovely little loop knot. And as you can see, that's a perfect loop. There's no, the hook link's not going off in different angles. All you're going to do is chop that off, and then you've got the perfect, I mean, what I normally do would steam this material into a little bit of a curve, a little bit like the withy, just so you've got the flip and the turn, and then it ends up, you know, I mean, if you've got a solar rig cone, put that over the steam, and it will stay exactly like that. And that's basically the finished rig. All we're going to do on that, just show you how we're going to put the bait on. I mean, you can use any sort of material to put the bait on, whether it's hair floss, dental floss, or braid. It doesn't really make a lot of difference. I'm going to pierce these pop-ups. I would normally put them on with dental floss, but they take a little bit longer. And if you're fishing short sessions, there's no need to go that far. So literally, we're going to take one of the Accelerate pop-ups, Simple as that, little overhand loop. And then tie it onto the little ring. And then that is the completed rig. As you can see, it's a little bit fingers and thumbs. If you're a little bit clumsy, it's probably a difficult rig for you to tie, but most of the time, once you've got your head around it, the hardest part is the silicone boom. But once you've done a few, and that's your finished rig. If we just take off the tag end, and that will sit absolutely perfect. Little blob of putty round the knot, and then that will sit absolutely perfect. And that's a pretty special carp rig. I don't think you're going to get a lot better hooker than this particular rig. So if you're into your rigs and you're into your, using the best products, then that rig will catch you a lot of fish. That is the silicone boom rig. Whatever you want to use this with, it will catch you a lot more fish than just fishing standard baits. Let's hope that one helps you.
So we're on to the main components of the rigs now, really. All the hook length materials. 12 months ago, when we did the Carp DVD, everything was in the development stage. Now they've been on the market for the last 12 months. I know you two have got your favourites.
Yeah, I think undoubtedly over the last year or so, it's apparent that people have gone absolutely chod rig mad and zig rig mad, and these two products, they're absolutely perfect. The Power Zig, as we said before, it's hollow in construction, so it floats very buoyant, ideal for like zig rigs and surface fishing, and it's a nice sort of sexy colour as well, isn't it?
Yeah. You had a right lump on that.
Yeah, the first time I ever used it, I got the biggest one in the lake, a 44 pounder, so that was quite pleasing. And a friend of mine who was fishing with, it was a charity weekend, he had a personal best as well, with 34 pounds, so he was well chuffed as well. So we're both sold on the product as a result of that. But the Power Stiff, stiff rigs were the in thing for a number of years and still are. But like the latest vogue for chod rigs, this material is absolutely perfect for it. Coated braids have been around for, it seems like an age now, but what I like about this one is ever so smooth, nice and smooth outer, and like a real nice supple inner.
Loads of anglers use coated braids. Yeah. Everybody has a spool in the tackle box. I quite like the fact that it's not shiny as well. Yeah. I can't get my head around a shiny hook link for some reason.
That's right.
It's nice that it's got that dull sort of finish to it.
Yeah, I think the main advantage with the coated braids, for people who don't know, is I absolutely detest tangles, And if you want to use a 15-pound breaking straight hook link, if you use braid or something like that, tangles can be a problem. Whereas you can use 15-pound in that, and whereas you can use 15-pound nylon hook link, and it's too stiff. Whereas 15-pound is there, it's nice and supple, and you've got the breaking strain, and that's the main advantage. I'm confident I can cast it out there, and it's it's not tangled.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you, because I'm absolutely, that's why I use fluorocarbon a lot. Paranoid about a tangle.
Yeah.
I think I've almost got OCD. If I put 3 rods down, I think, is that one? I'll reel it in middle of the night. Yeah, I'm completely fruitcake about it, and and braids are, that's why we've got coated braids, and but braids still do have a place in carp angling.
Oh yeah.
If you're using particular rigs, like the flip and turn rigs, like the withy rig, and I know this was in the infancy when we made the last DVD, the Power Carp, and I used this and landed that. I had a 51 common on it. Absolutely, it's a sinking braid, ultra thin, and it, for mechanical rigs that do the flip and turn, you want them to coil round and have a little bit of element of travel. Then a braid is the way forward. But what Ultima don't sort of sit on their laurels and think we've got the ultimate braid here, because we're working on a new one, and this will be out. By the time you guys see this DVD, I don't know if you can see how heavy that is. It's a braid, but in a really heavy variety, heavier than anything else. There is no competitor with a braid that heavy. We're working on a few. I've been testing this, and we're working on a few issues just on thickness, because if you want to use a small hook to get the amount of weight into that particular hook link, it ends up a little bit thicker than a normal hook link. It doesn't seem to have made a difference, because I think if you've got a hook link that's laying completely flat on the floor, it doesn't seem to make a difference with the carp. But the only issue we had was was putting it through tiny hooks, getting it through twice, just on the thickness. So we're working on this one. This will be, I'll use this an awful lot because I've used it and cast it, because it's the thickness, the thickness and the heaviness of it. It doesn't tend to tangle. It doesn't tend to tangle. So we're aiming towards the ultimate Hooklink. The other way of doing it, I know Lee and lots of people love those coated ones. We've got the Hyperlink Pro. That is slightly different. It's a braid, but with the fluorocarbon inside. And this one, you can pull the fluorocarbon out halfway through, snip it off, and you've got a hinged rig with no knots. Yeah. Absolutely, it's one of my favourites. And you don't have to steam it yet again. It's got fluorocarbon in it. Run it along, a little tiny bit of heat along, and it ends up nice and stiff, nice and straight. And because it's got the fluorocarbon, it will sink down. So you can create many different rigs. Probably, the most technical rigs are combi stiff rigs. Carp just can't get their heads around them. You've got an element of hinged combined with the stiff, so they can't blow it out, the anti-eject. And they seem to be, the ultimate rigs, and that's why we brought that one into the range. But we will be, we're working on different Hooklinks. We're looking at new materials, revolutionary materials, but that's for another show.
Yeah.
Okay, this rig is one that I've called the boa rig. It's utilising the power core. It's actually lead free. We're going to chop off 10 inches of lead core, and we're going to take out the whole length of the lead free wire. So basically all we've got is a nice spliceable braid. And what we're going to do first, we're going to splice on a little tiny ring swivel. Can be a little bit fiddly splicing, needs a little bit of practice. You're trying to get the point of the blunt end of the needle through the core of the lead core, as we've done there. And as you can see, I've got it behind the gate there, and it's a very effective way of fishing without any knots, and it never slips. And all we're going to do is put the tag end through the swivel. If it doesn't splay out, so I'm using a micro ring swivel here. So it can be a little bit fiddly, as you'll find out. You end up with a little loop, like so, and you've grabbed the tag end, like the frayed end of the power core, and you're going to pull it through, like so. And you see that? That's as simple as that. And that gives you a really strong, non-slip, knotless way of attaching a braid. So it's very, very clever. If you've never used lead core, that's the easy way of doing it. You can pull it out, cut that bit off, it will never slip through. While it's under pressure, you've got the outside pulling on the inside. So basically, that's the actual hook end done. So whatever you want to tie onto this part, you can use all sorts of different rigs. So what we're going to do now is splice on the other end, which we're going to put the ring swivel, which is going to go into your lead clip. So we're going to splice that on. If we cut that down a little bit, it's a bit too long, go the opposite way up towards the tag end from the micro ring swivel, thread it through, again get the gate open like so. It's a lot easier on this one because we're putting it onto a bigger ring, and that'll just go through. Make your little loop and then close the gate like so again, and then pull that through. Ease it through and then pull it down. And then we've got two spliced ends, no knots. Cut off the tag end. So basically what you've got is probably, I would say, about 9 inches, 8 inches of lead-free power core. So what we're going to do now, this is the part that makes it into why I called it the boa rig. I'm going to actually splice in to about halfway, just over halfway down, some number 3 pole elastic. So cut off a decent length. We're going to take the splicer needle, go from, you want it up close to where the splicing's finished up there. You want it very close to that, from the swivel end, from the lead end. And we're going to splice in now. We're going to get the needle to splice through. Like I say, this can be fiddly, especially when you're doing it at the camera. And just thread up, just gently. Don't sort of push it too. If you push it too hard, you'll end up coming out of the side of the lead core. And then just before we get to the spliced part, we're going to take that out of there. You've got both ends nearly spliced to the lead core. You're putting the needle through the ends that are spliced. Okay, so what you do now, take your pole elastic and then pull it through. Gently pulling it through, no need to rush it. And then we've got one end out, and as you can see there, that's spliced through your Hooklink material. And all you need to do on here, one end, a small granny knot, and they pull down really tight, the granny knots on here. So you do 3 of those, 3 little granny knots. Like so. And because that pulls, you know, because it's elastic, it pulls in nice and tight, and then you chop it off. Okay, so what we're doing now is we're going to coil up. This is what gave me the idea of calling it the boa rig, because we're going to just coil that little bit up, just so it's constricted. And you've got the elastic in there. Cut off the tag, and then go round and do your 3 knots again. So we've got 1, very easy to work with, pole elastic, 2, 3. Take off your tag end. Basically, you've got an elasticated rig. So if you're fishing, you know, you like your rainbows and, you know, where you need a really strong Hooklink material, one that won't let you down, but also gives you the added advantage of the stretch. You've only got to move it a few mil and the hook's already into the fleshy part, taking hold. They won't know what to do with that. And that's the boa rig. And literally on this end, you can put on whatever rig you want, whether you want a chod rig. I mean, just for show, I'll show you just, you know, a little combi rig. This is just using fluorocarbon, so if you're worried about, you know, the cool, that looks sharp. If you're worried about the lead core sort of being a bit alarming amongst the bottom, you'd be very surprised how well it blends in. But this is just literally, you can have a pop-up, a bottom bait rig, whatever you want. I mean, it's all about the capsule of the lead core doing the elasticated, you know, principle that's fixed on there. And as you can see, you know, that's just taking hold, and whatever way they pull that from, they're going to get an element of stretch, but you've got a mighty strong hook link to land your fish. And you might want to use braid on there. You can use whatever you want, and that is the boa rig. It's once you've tied a few and you know how to splice, it's quite easy. I first used this on Frimley Pit 3, and I had 2 30s and an upper 20 on an overnight session using this, proving to me that, you know, it's one of them. It did work really, really well, and it does work really, really well. So if you incorporate something like that, if you go into your big snaggy waters and you need to land the fish, that type of rig will help you. It will help you do that. Okay, next rig. Utilising the Power Stiff in 22, unbelievable material. The stiff rig's been around, the Hinge stiff rig's been around for a long time. I think it's probably made famous by Terry Hearn, but it's one that doesn't get used that much nowadays. So what we're going to do is just show you how to construct it using the Power Stiff. And you can use, the beauty of the Power Stiff is it's thinner than most of the stiff materials on the market. So you can actually use a smaller hook. I think that's a size 8. Basically what we're going to do, just poke through the back of the eye a tag end. You can see the tag end, that's going to form the D-rig. We're literally just going to start winding round the hook shank. I normally do about 7 turns. I don't think it's that critical. And then take it back through the eye. So literally, you've ended up with a knotless knot at the moment. Take your tiny little hook ring and put it on the tag end. Simple as that. Take the tag end and put it through, and you'll see how easy this Power Stiff is to get through the eye of the hook, because quite often they're quite difficult to do. So all you're forming is a little tiny D. Fold the actual hook link out the way, because we're going to chop this down just about where my fingers, top of my fingers, and then blob the bottom part to stop the D-rig coming undone. As you can see, just going to blob it. As it's setting, just push your finger onto the blob, just so we've created, and it will stop the D-ring coming out. And that's the main part of the rig done already. Depending on how high you want, a lot of people fish this about 2 inches high. I don't like pop-ups that high, but you know, they work. But personally, I want it probably about an inch and a half, quite a short sort of pop-up. So I'm putting an overhand loop in the knot I've shown in a few of the other rigs actually, and then we're going to put on the little baby ring swivel, and you're going to put the hook link through the actual ring part, not the actual swivel, but the ring part of the ring swivel. And then we take the tag end, poke it through, and because of the Power Stiff, you're going to pull the little knot down, just so you've got a little tiny loop just to actually poke the tag end back through, and then pull it up quite close to the ring swivel. As you can see, there's not much of a gap there, and that's going to form the tiny little loop we want. Take the Power Stiff, round twice, and then back through the little loop. It's as simple as that. And then pull it down nice and securely. And if you want to make the loop a nice little loop, you can either do it with a pen, or again I use the baiting needle, put it over there, and then pull this part nice and secure. So you end up with a nice tight knot. Trim off your tag end. And there's no need to blob that, because that knot is very, very secure. And as you can see, you've got a lovely, lovely little loop. It's not all twisted. It's a perfect loop for that. And it just gives the rig, once it's on the bottom, flexibility. Whichever angle the fish sucks the bait from, that will turn. So, and that's the idea of having these little links here. So you've got a link there and a link there, and it just gives it the flexibility, the movement that you'll need for this particular rig. You know, I mean, that is basically just the chod rig. So you can either use it as a chod rig, or you can tie these up when you get to the lake. If you've got a load of those tied up, that's the most complicated part. The other part is the actual length of the hook link. There's no need to have a loop on this part, because you've got all the flexibility in the actual ring there. Because of the strength of this material, it's just 3 turn blood knot. That's it, that's all you need. Just pull it down slowly, because if you pull it down fast, you will damage the material. You know, it's really strong stuff, but it's not, you know, it's not invincible, and you will put marks in it. So you just pull it down slowly, then really tighten it off. Cut off the tag end again. That's going to form part of the hook link. As you can see, the rig's almost done. Takes very little time to do. I've probably got a bit too much material there. You've got the ring swivel part there. It's not that important to have a loop this end. You can put a loop in, but you don't need it because you've got the ring part there, 3 times round. Wet it down, pull it down just slowly rather than just, and then pull it secure. And that basically is the Hinge stiff rig. And all we're going to do is put a bait on there. You put a nice pop-up on there. It's not a bottom bait rig, it is a pop-up. So we're going to secure down with the bait floss, a pop-up. You do 2 loops, one behind each other, and then just back through twice. Through there twice, pull the knot down, and then we've got a sliding loop knot. All you do, take your boilie, and then just gently ease the loop down over the boilie, so it's in the centre of the boilie, going around all around the centre. It's quite a small little pop-up, this one, but you can use it with, you know, you can use this rig with plastic corn, pop-up plastic corn, pop-up maize, or pop-ups that, you know, the bait you're using. Take off the tag end, blob it down a little bit, and then you're ready to tie on. But before we tie that on, what I generally do with this rig is put it through the steaming process, and I'll do that before we put the bait on, and we'll show you how. Okay, right, well basically that's the finished rig. All we're going to go put it through now is the steaming process. Be careful, I mean, that's why I'm using 2 baiting needles. Over steam, obvious reasons, you're going to burn yourself. So we're going to actually just steam the main part, just so you end up with a lovely stiff kick out section that's going to kick away from the lead, and then just hold it there nice and tight. You notice I've still got tension on that, just so you get a perfectly straight hook link. That should be dry enough now. You can see how straight that is, and how, you know, I can pick that up. That's as stiff as you're going to get. And that's why the power stiff is so good. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. This part is going to be using the rig cone again, because what we're going to do is create like a withy style, just a gentle curve in it. If you'll notice, I'm going to put this one further up the rig cone than I did the last rig. And then, as you can see from that, and all we're going to do is hold that over the steam. Don't pull the loop too hard, because we want that to still remain as a loop. And once that's dried out, we'll leave that to set, just for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, whatever you like. But as long as it sets, we've got a nice little gentle curve, as you can see. That's basically as it's going to sit in the water once we put the bait on. We're going to tie that onto the little ring of the D. It's not too fiddly once you've done a few. It's like anything, you know, if you're starting out carp angling, these are the rigs that the main guys use to catch these big fish. So it's worth, you know, up in your game, learning to tie a few of the complicated rigs, and you will outwit the big carp. Yet again, just a little tiny blob on the. Be careful not to affect the power stiff, or get the flame on the power stiff. The only thing to put on that, because it's a pop-up, a little bit of putty. You can mould the putty round the knot that's going down on the upright part of the rig. So a little tiny piece of putty. You'll find that the swivel helps keep the bait down anyway, keeps the rig down. Mould it round the knot, and that is ready to cast out. And that will catch you an awful lot of big fish, and that's how it will sit in the water. But you notice how that rig will turn 360, because we've done the loop with the ring swivel. Whatever way the carp touches, because we've put the withy style sort of bend in it, it will always flip round in the bottom lip, and then you can see how stiff the power stiff is. There's no way that fish is going to deal with that. They won't be able to eject it. It'll catch an awful lot of fish. Like I say, it's nothing new. It's been around for quite a while, and there's quite a few rigs that are formulated around that, like the chod rig. I'd rather use this rig that has got that element of travel rather than a chod that is stuck onto. You know, there's no question the chod works, but I just think this one for me is more my style of rig, and it'll catch an awful lot of carp. Hope that one helps.
So fluorocarbons then, guys, vital part of the carp angler's armoury nowadays. Very, very popular, in vogue if you want to call it, but...
Yeah, I'd say so, Pete. There's certainly, latter part of autumn into winter, the lakes are clearing up. You want to be as invisible as an angler as you can be, especially when the fish are slowing down. Fluorocarbon gives you that edge. It sinks down, you're not over massive weed beds, everything's flat on the bottom, so the fish quite often circle around looking for lines. You've got a tight line going to your lead. A fluorocarbon, you can ease it off, it will sink down. The beauty with the Pure Power is that we've actually designed a fluorocarbon that is as soft as any mono, and it will cast as far as most monos. The first time out on this particular thing, I used £16. It's quite ironic, really. We're actually sat in the swim, the very same swim I caught the Isle of Wight record, and I had it on all 3 rods. And on this particular lake, I had 3 upper 20s, 3 30s, and the 48.5, which was some kind of test for me on a line. I was pretty pleased with that, and it was remarkable. It probably wasn't the right lake to have it on because how far that will cast, but I was using it in a different scenario. I was sinking it off. I was almost backleading, but I still had, within sort of the fish moving off 2 foot, indication. And that was vital, and I think that was key. And all those fish, bar one, came in the daytime.
Visual part of angling really comes into play.
Well, I know that the owner of this particular lake said that they're really spooked out if they hear human beings, hear the footsteps, I don't think they knew we were here. Well, I was here. Once I was cast in, let it all sort of sink down to the bottom, and it did exactly what it was supposed to. And there's a sort of a gravel bar over there, and it was all the fish were fighting over the top of it up against the reeds, and I didn't have any troubles whatsoever. Performed amicably, and it landed me an Isle of Wight record.
I think the main advantage is fluorocarbon by its nature, nothing affects it, does it? So a lot of makes of fluorocarbon. It's wiry when you put it on your reel, and it's wiry 6 months later. Because of the softening process, it's really nice to use straight away, isn't it?
It feels just like a mono.
Yeah.
The nice part of being a consultant with Ultima is that they actually listen. We listen to the public, we listen to what people want, we know hopefully what people want, and we're looking for it for ourselves, and they tend to incorporate that into a product. So not only is it in white, it doesn't just come in white, a clear finish, we've done it in the green as well, because some people prefer that colour. I don't know of another fluorocarbon.
There's not, I don't think.
So there you go. So we were the first people to actually incorporate a dye into fluorocarbon, and most lake beds have an element of green, brown, and that once that's lead on the bottom, the fish don't know it's there. It's just an awesome line, like the Hooklinks. Obviously I make most of my fishing, I'd say, is done with fluorocarbon Hooklinks. I use the Power Link in 15 and 18. Incorporated with that, I don't even use a leader, so it's straight to the lead. And in the thicker variety, I have no problems with flicking scales off, or people talk about that. I haven't ever had a problem with that. Just literally a lead clip. When you put that in the water, all you can see is the lead.
Do you find knots? You have to use different knots, or is
I use the twice through the eye, 5-turn grinner.
Right. Okay.
And it's the same as you would do with a normal braid.
Yeah.
I haven't had any problems.
No.
I used to. I'm not sounding like an Ultima flagship here, but. Other manufacturers that I've used in the past, I've had problems with, like, it snapping, polymers going. Some of it was to do with the hooks we used to start with. If you don't use an outturned eye, that took me about 1.5 years to work that out. But I haven't had any problems at all with knot strength. So no, but I do use it in the 15 and the 18, and the 18 is still supple enough to use it as
I know you've said to me before it's almost braid-like.
Yeah,
the way it operates. That's with the basic.
That's 15. It's really floppy, which is unusual for fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbons of past, they'll snap, but this stuff just doesn't snap. It's a really good fluorocarbon. I don't ever see fluorocarbon disappearing from the carp world. I see it getting stronger and stronger.
Well, the other thing with Pure Power is the fact that the softening process has made it into a much more castable line as well. So, through testing, Mark Hutchinson, one of our consultants, has cast over 170 yards with a baited rig with
That's the £16 he did that
£16
with.
fluorocarbon, which is
Well,
unbelievable.
we're not saying you're going to cast that far because no one probably will. But that's with a fluorocarbon. That was £16 straight through. No leaders. That was bang straight through. So if you take the average angler, he's going to be able to cast sort of ton 20, ton 10 with a fluorocarbon and fish happily and confident. That's what fluorocarbon will do for you. It'll just give you that extra key factor in confidence.
I think the other aspect it gives you is that you do tend to fish slack lines at shorter distances. And if you see a fish roll or you see a fish top out and you want to punch a lead at it, which has been the result in many big fish being caught, if you've got the fluorocarbons of old, you wouldn't be able to reach. Whereas with this,
well, you get the old frapping around the rod, and I have used them and steered away from them till obviously then Power Carp come out, fluorocarbon coated, a line that casts could sink. But this stuff will actually sink like a brick. So you can use it as a Hooklink as well, which I've done in the 16 variety. Used it with the basic complicated rig, and it works. It's brilliant. But obviously, be choosy when you're choosing your fluorocarbon. Choose the right strain. It's not cheap, but it does a job that especially in like you say through autumn and winter, it'll help you catch more fish.
definitely.
This is the withy pool rig. This is probably what made me as synonymous in carp angling as I am. Come up with this rig. Well, I mean, I initially was using the bent hook rig back in the late 80s, probably 87. It was Mr. Pete Wilson of Ultima who actually showed me the bent hook rig. It was when I was about 17. Started using it, catching a lot of fish. It did a lot of fish damage. As a syndicate, we voted it out. It just wasn't a considerate carp rig. It caught a lot of fish, but it was damaging fish. So for 2 years, there's a bit of a lull in withy because it was, it was such a devastating rig. I started messing around, and I've always been into rigs, messing around with different variants. Initially, I came up with the ring slid all the way round there. We didn't have shrink tube in those days, and I was literally fixing up a float stop and doing a round circle of soft tubing, and it was sliding up round there. It was catching, but it was catching in various places, and I had a couple that were outside the mouth. So something had to be, it had to be changed. I knew it was on the same principle as the bent hook, and it was obviously, you can see that, it's a nice bend in the hook. This is where people get confused with the withy. It bends out straight. So it's, once it's hooked, it's done its job. If playing a fish and it gets in the weed, that, just because of the shape of the tubing, it actually grips the bottom lip. So if you do slacken off to it, whatever, it's one of those rigs that tends to stay in the fish's mouth more than just a hook on its own. It's great for European angling, absolutely pucker for all you guys fishing these big pits with the big fish, because it creates a big hook. You can close that up a little bit. I've seen people use longer lengths of tubing and make them flatter, so it lays along the bottom, and literally just they're using it with a stiff rig. So it's still the withy pool rig, but in a different form, just a lot more tubing and a lot flatter along the bottom. But this is how I use it. I always use it with a pop-up primarily. 1988 was when it was conceived, and I suppose I've got to be quite flattered that it's still used today as one of the most well-known pop-up rigs. I'm using it with the braid from Ultima. That's how I'd always use it, normally with a braid. You can use it, like with the fluorocarbon, you can have a semi-stiff rig, but just whip on the braid onto that. But I tend to use it braid only. I always use it at 7 inches. That's the best. I did a lot of testing in the late 80s, early 90s, and I found the 7 inches was the ultimate, for fishing for fish for 25 plus to 30. That seemed to be the ultimate flip and turn, a little bit of movement on it. And I was using it with a helicopter rig. And as I say, using it with the Ultima braid, and I will show you just quickly how we tie this. A lot of people are confused with how this rig, they look at it and they think, oh God, it's too confusing. Obviously, you've seen how to tie on a 4-turn, 5-turn grinner knot. Literally, I'm just using it straight onto the hook. I'm using the GLT hooks, the penetrators, because that was one of the original hooks. It was out in those days that I used with this rig. Literally thread on 1 inch of the tubing, slide it down, and put probably 5 mil over the eye of the hook. and it secures on there nice and tight. What I find with some of the stiffer shrink tubes is that once you've put this on the withy rig, it moves about even after you've steamed it. This stuff is quite tight and it shrinks to half the size. So literally that's the start of the withy rig. And the next thing I do is the steaming, and this is probably the bit that most people get wrong. Whilst we're waiting for the kettle to boil, I'll move on, and it's quite important, it's vital that you use it with an oval ring because of the way the bait sits. If you use a round ring and you tie it on, the bait, it makes the hook sit at a slight angle. It's not what you want. You want it to, I'll show you in a sec how you want the hook to sit. We're just using a little tiny float stop or whatever stop you can get your hands on, but sometimes, you know, it pays to glue this round. A lot of people fish it up near the top. I've never found it works better just on the edge of the bend. As it starts to bend, you've got an element of travel. You don't want it too far up, because what I've found is, depending on what hook you use, and if you hook the fish and your float stops up there, the hook won't penetrate into the mouth, so you're playing the whole fish, you're playing on the bend of the hook, and I've had them snap where that has slid round. So that is a key element to how the rig works. You need it further around there, and as you can see from that particular setup, you can see where it is. The hook then can drop. It's just perfect. And if I can show you that way, the way the hook sits, this is in conjunction with using it with an oval ring. I slide the knot over, slightly over to one side, and that makes the ring sit perpendicular to the hook, and that's quite critical. It's very critical, because with a round ring, it sits like that. It's not a good presentation. That's exactly how you want to tie it. Just slide in the knot over. It's literally, you've got your power braid straight to the hook, 1 inch of tubing, a ring and a stop. It's very, very simple. Always when you're putting over steam, especially young kids, if you're going to be steaming up links like this, always try and use some pliers. Don't put your hands anywhere near the steam. So what we'll do, just hold it straight, heat up the shrink tube, and literally just bend it round till I know that's the angle that I want. It's literally just a nice curved C, and that is the withy rig. All you've got to do, tie your pop-up on, put your split shot on to balance it. I tend to use it as a critically balanced bait. You can use it as a bottom bait, it still works. A lot of people have asked me that, and when it got hard at withy after they'd been caned for about 4 years, I started using it with a bottom bait, and it caught me as many fish. So that's it. That's the withy pool rig. And as I say, whether it's in England, whether it's abroad, carp are doing you all the time, and they are, no question about it. Like I say, going back to that hermit lead, it outfished this rig at once, but there's not many other rigs that I know that this will get outfished on. This is the one. If you're fishing a pop-up rig, it's probably the ultimate. So that's as far as the withy pool rig goes. That's how I use it. That's how it was concepted in 1988, and it's still going to this day as one of the world's most famous pop-up rigs. Try it. You'll find it's good. Okay, a rig I'd like to demonstrate on how to tie. It's a rig that I've used for probably the last 8 years, maybe 7, since the advent of fluorocarbon. I'm going to be doing it with the Power Link, which is made in-house by Ultima. They've softened it. It's the next level on. It's ideal for a Hooklink. I like the bait to curl round, have a little element of travel, and to do it with fluorocarbon is fantastic, and this product offers you that facility. I'll show you what I normally do. I normally take off about 14 inches, because we're doing turns around the hook. The hook link gets shorter and shorter. We're going to tie a simple overhand knot. That is just literally to secure the buoy in place. As you can see, just from that is a simple overhand loop, and we're going to cut off the tag end and secure the buoy on. So we're just going to put the buoy through, secure it with a buoy stop. The only hook I use now with any type of fluorocarbon is the stiff riggers, the ESP stiff riggers. Corda do the choddy, anything with an outturned eye. But on this particular rig, because of the way the eye is angled for the chod rigs, try and straighten it back a bit. It's still got a slightly outturned eye, but too much and the hook doesn't sit. You'll see this is all about the way the hook sits aggressively towards in conjunction with the buoy. So the first thing you do is take the power link, poke it through the back of the eye, and then slide the hook down into position. And what I normally do is I just push it down so it just passes the top of the boilie. And that's quite critical. You don't want it too close because there's no travel on the hair. The hair still, because this material is quite soft, the hair actually, I love the way the hair separates once the carp takes it in. So what we're doing is doing 3 turns around the top of the hook. And then just by that, I'm letting the boilie go, and then I'm taking the rest of the turns around the other side of the hair. And then I normally do about 6 turns and then back through. This is quite critical, not back through the, you know, the face of the eye, but through the back of the eye again. And then that is literally the rig done. And as I said, you know, it's the type of rig, if you turn up and you haven't got a rig tied, I've called it, you know, years and years ago, I called it the basic complicated rig, because it is very, very basic to make, but it's complicated in the way that the hook sits. And once we've done that, we bend the eye out, and if you can see how aggressively that hook sits. I've caught over 100 English 30s on this rig alone. You know, so I know it works for big fish. I've caught a lot of other fish on it, but it's a big fish rig. It can't get any simpler than that. But just the way that the hook sits, it literally takes hold normally in the scissors. That's where you'll get your hook hold. Like I say, you know, a softer material, you can design a rig to hook straight bang in the centre of the bottom lip, but this isn't what it's about. Okay, yeah, I'll say a little trick you can do. Because you've tied this, you've gone fishing, you've tied this basically when you've arrived, you can either thread the bag with the pellets. If you're fishing in silkweed or, you know, sort of detritus bottom, you can literally thread on a little bag, pull the hook through. I would normally use the PVA that's a little bit more, this one is not perfect, but you can pull the hook through and you've got literally your hook is covered by the PVA bag, so you can cast that onto silkweed, any kind of, you know, sort of mucky area really that you don't want to cast a single hook bait out onto. And the fluorocarbon, it's perfect. It sinks to all the contours. You can see how supple that is. It will sink to any contours and disappear literally during the daytime, and it definitely upped my catch rate. Well, one of my favourite methods, and this is probably the one that's caught me more big fish than any other method to put on to the basic complicated rig, is literally, it's quite simple, a stringer of 5 boilies. If I was using a double boilie, I'd use seven baits, but this is how it works. I've called this one like the round stringer, and I used it back in the 80s when I was using these massive boilies, and I didn't know whether to put any spares out, so I was putting small baits around the big one. Literally what we're doing, you take your hook bait, you're tying on your stringer straight onto the bottom of the hook. I normally secure it twice because, you know, PVA string can slip. You don't want that. And what we're doing now is we're just going to slide the knot up to the top of where we've knotted the fluorocarbon, and literally take the bottom end, because I've put the boilie on halfway through, it's got a little loop that we can loop the boilie onto, and we loop it through. Okay, so we've got a little round stringer, and then what we do is we push the boilie through the other side, so it's exactly dead centre of all the baits. Trim off the tag end, and that's the bit we're going to use to secure the hair down. This is just taking it a little level further. You don't want to cast that and that ends up over the top of that. You know, you've got a very poor presentation. So I always tie down with the tag end of the quick melt, so you're not using a massive amount of it, onto the shank of the hook. Literally, it's easier when it's on your rod. It's a bit more difficult to show now, but just one loop, just to hold it in place while you're casting it. You can cast this into silkweed, into weed, any way you want, flat bottom, and that will help you. It helps anti-tangle, and what it does is I always feather the rod down. Wherever I cast, I feather the rod down, no matter what, you know, what bottom it is. I feather it down so the rig is always going down and dropping. And where it's, you know, this is going to be about 10 inches long, it's generally going to curve, and I've done it in the edges and I've seen it work, and it generally curves, and it gives that rig a little element of travel. The movement of big fish is totally different than a small fish that's, you know, not upright in itself, moving along very quickly. Once that's in the water and the PVA is dissolved, it's very difficult to make out which one's a hook bait. So if it's difficult for a human to analyse in that process, it's going to be a hell of a difference for a carp. He's generally they just come in, snuffle the whole lot, find out he's hooked. You've got your aggressive hook, and that has caught me over 100 English 30s, and that proves that rig is a very big fish rig. It's probably all I've got to say on it. You know, it's a very, very good rig. Using it in conjunction with the power link, it'll catch you a lot of fish. Okay, right, well, the clever chaps at Ultima have produced, as far as I know, the first zig of floater fishing line, designated floater fishing line on the market. This stuff's very, very unique. It has a hollow core, so it will always float. When you're floater fishing, absolutely imperative that you don't have a sinking link. And this stuff will catch an awful lot of fish all the way over the world. Very, very unique product. I'll show you very, very quickly. It's, again, you've seen the basic complicated rig. Literally, you're tying on a little loop onto the end of the power zig, trim off your tag end. I'll show you with one piece of corn just to make it quick. All we're doing, lassoing the bait on, as you can see from the two colours. I quite like using two colours. It's something different. Most people will probably use, you know, one colour. You could even put the corn on the other way, and that's probably how I would normally fish it. You take off your required length for your power zig, using a very small out-turned eye hook. In this case, it's a size 8. Through the back of the eye, take the power zig, and then pull it down towards your designated hook bait, whatever it will be. Have quite a short hair. Makes it a little bit tricky in tying, once you've got the hang of it, tying the actual basic complicated. But I go 4 turns on a zig, and then underneath 4 turns. This one's even closer, and this is probably how I would fish it rather than the longer hair. It's all fingers and thumbs when you're doing zig rig, but that is zig rig fishing. But there are days when it's the only method, and it's caught some of the largest carp in the country, in England at least. That's probably how I would fish it, very close to the hook bait like that. Just literally, carp takes hold of it, it's hooked, and that is the power zig line. Very, very unique product. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. Stays floating, it'll keep your hook bait floated, it'll catch you a lot of fish. Absolutely blinding product. Right, moving on with carp rigs and technology and the forethought that's gone into this particular rig. I come up with this rig probably, I'd say 6 years ago. After watching a lot of carp in the edges, how they get rid of rigs, I've called this one the Hermit lead. It's a very, very clever rig, and it's the ultimate. I can't think of anything better than this particular rig. Now, it's using the power shock leader, which is going to be, it's got a permanent home in my tackle box, this product, and you need this for the Hermit rig. I would normally have about 5 turns of this, so you're using an awful lot of it, 5 turns on the reel, so there's probably about 40 foot. But this is a shock leader with a difference, because this is fluorocarbon, it will sink down. You use this particular rig, because it's elasticated, and I'll show you in a minute how we're elasticating it, but primarily what you've got to get into your head is that this goes straight through to the swivel, protected by the bead, which is quite important. I'll use the first contact beads, but you need a tough rubber bead, not the hard plastic, but a tough rubber bead. Because if you have a soft bead, once you cast out, the swivel can end up back through inside the bead, which affects the mechanics. But if you look at this, I'll put this on my hand just to demonstrate it. You've only got to move a few mil, and that's literally taking hold of my finger, and it starts to hurt after a while because it's pulling, the elasticity is pulling against, it's almost gravity, but it's not gravity, but it's all inside the lead, and hence why I called it the Hermit rig. But it will catch fish right the way through the winter. This is when I really use it. But like I say, the power shock leader is probably one of the key elements, and also the tail rubber. What we've got inside here, the little tag end, and I'll demonstrate this in a minute. If I pull this rig, you'll see through there that the pole elastic is whipped on. And if you notice how far back it is, it's probably about just under 3/4 of the way up the tubing. So there's very little amount of pole elastic to do that job. And what happens, once the fish is hooked, if you get a really clever fish that tries to pick that up, that picks up the lead on its axis, so it will always get the weight of the lead, whatever way it's moving. If it's moving sideways, and once he's had enough, the fish has decided he's not going to get rid of this particular rig, he's going to bolt, that pulls out of the tail rubber. So you're left with a little tag end. The fish is, you're literally then onto a running rig. And basically you can fish your bobbins on the floor. It's very critical, don't fish this tight to the lead because the elastic won't be able to stretch then. So that's the rig null and void. You need to let the power shock leader do its job, lay along the bottom, have the bobbin on the floor. Once that's run, you'll get a little tiny flicker on the bobbin, then whack, you're gone, you're into a running rig. So, but the key element to this is the pole elastic and the shock leader, which, you know, it lays down flat, everything's out the way, you haven't got to worry about back leads, you don't want back leads on this. This is the whole point. You want your bobbins on the floor, nice slack, so you're not going to spook the fish. There's one mouthful to go at. You can still fish this over a bed of particle or boilie, and it will nail a lot of fish. And what I've incorporated, basically on the rig end, just a very open gaped rig with a tiny little kicker, little piece of tubing. I've been using the fang twisters on this particular rig because they do turn in very, very, very quick. They're ultra sharp. All you need is just literally the fish to move a millimetre of pressure away from the lead and it will do its job. So what I'm incorporating here is a new prototype braid from Ultima. This has got the sinking element, it will lay flat. You can see how nicely it's cooled round. They've put in a fleck to break it up. Most bottoms, whatever you're fishing over, will have elements of black in it. It will do the job. This one will be out in the new year. It's certainly another product for my tackle box. So I'm going to put this rig on and we're going to show you how we catch a carp on it. The key part to this, and the bit that I get asked the most, is the pole elastic and where it goes. Now you're literally going to do a 4-turn grinner knot and holding a very small tag end at the bottom. It's just literally a slip knot like you'd put on pole elastic on, you know, if you're marking your line up or whatever. Just literally 4 turns and then we're going to pull it nice and tight. It's a little bit difficult to work with pole elastic, but it will go into a knot. And then what we're going to do is slide it down. This is the hardest part that people don't understand, so I'm going to go slower on this part. We're tagging off the bottom, we're chopping off the tag end off the bottom. And if we can find the tail rubber, we're going to pull this through till we can just see it at the other end. And then trap the tail rubber on as not to pull that part back through. So what we need the knot about here, 3/4 of the way up the tubing. If you have it too close down here, when you pull it, the knot comes out and it can loop the leader. So you don't want that. The rig, once that happens, the rig won't work. So you need it literally further up here. So I'm going to slide this down, get hold of the power shock leader, slide it down, work it out finger-wise. That's perfect. And now we're just going to tighten that up really tight so it doesn't slip. Trim off the little tiny tag end almost to, you know, so it's so close so it doesn't get caught up in the tubing system, and then pull it up. You can now take the tail rubber off and adjust your tension. So if we test the tension there, we can see it's working perfectly. Absolutely perfect. That you can see just, I'm sorry if that's a bit quick, but that's how fast a carp can shake its head and he's gone on a normal rig. You know, you can throw your lead, and that's the idea of this particular rig. So we'll just put down the tail rubber, on it goes, chop off the tag end, and you have yourself probably what I'd consider, I've been into rigs for like nearly 30 years of carp angling. This has been the side that I've always been into. It's probably what I'd consider the ultimate carp rig.
So we're here with Will, owner of Combley Lakes. Beautiful carp fishery. We're here with the Ultima team doing a bit of filming. I understand also, Will, that you're the owner of the Isle of Wight Carp Company.
Yeah, that's correct, Pete. Yeah, we've been rearing carp for a few years now on the various rearing ponds we've got. We've just had 4 across the way and we're expanding. The objective was to start trying to produce some fast-growing scaly fish because we were finding them hard to obtain in the market at the time. So we started to breed fish from known 40s that have got there in under 10 pounds, sort of plainer fish. We've started to put very sort of heavily scaled males with these females and spawning. We've got some nice leanies coming onto the farm soon. And
I understand also you've got the Isle of Wight record here at the fishery.
yes,
which Steve was...
Marlene at 48 pound 8. We're very pleased to get that this spring. It's nice to take the record. And we also spawn her as well, so we've got some of her offspring available for sale. So yeah. We've now got fish to 20 pound, and we've got C1s, C2s, 3 C4s and C5s, the C being the season. C1's 1 year old basically. We've got some nice, nice scaly fish. We've got linears, zip linears, fully scales. We've got some plainer fish that tend to grow slightly quicker. We like to give them a healthy diet. We give them like maize, barley, wheat, soya and coarse pellet. We tend to try and stick away from trout pellet. It's the high oil content. We think it makes the fish fatty and slightly unhealthy. We know there's no chemicals. The fish are more stress-free and they tend to get better growth rates. And in this pond we've maybe put 100, 120 C3s going in at about 6 pound in weight possibly, something like that.
What would you expect to take them out at or harvest them out at?
Hopefully we'd harvest them out C4s in the winter. I mean, we'd like them to average somewhere between 12 and 14 pounds if we can, that'd be the target.
Well, they're stunning fish, Will. What sort of weight's that one, about 17?
Yeah, I'd put it about somewhere between 16 and 18, mate, something like that I'd have thought.
Yeah, it's lovely fish. You can see they're in absolutely stunning condition, mate. They really are.
Yeah, so unfortunately today we haven't managed to get one of our very scaly ones to show you. There's still a nice fish with decent conformation, nice bit of length to it.
Yeah,
a few scales. You can see the star-bursting scales. We've got a few on there. I'll perhaps show you the other side. See a few of those scales.
Certainly looks like it's going to be a grower, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it'd be a good fish for the future, mate. Definitely.
I'll see you when you're 40 pound.
Yeah. Well, there'll be 5 next spring more because it's a C5, so it's only 4.5 for the date. I mean, next April it'll be 5 years old.
It's got a good thick back. I mean,
yeah.
So, Will, these are the 40 pounders of the future. These are 1 year old fish.
C1s. They're probably they were spawned sort of late this April, so this year. So not yet a year old, but.
Okay, so can we have a look at a few? Because little baby carp fascinate me, especially when you get the scale patterns.
Yeah, you'll get to see some more of our scaly ones now, mate. Yeah. If we dip our hands in, just carefully try and feather a few to the top. Start to see some of the linears we have and more heavily scaled fish.
Yeah.
One of our bigger plainer ones. The bigger ones do tend to grow quite faster.
Oh, look at that.
You see a beautiful little fully scaled there.
Wow, look at that.
We've got some nice big apple slice scales as well.
Fantastic.
So it's nice to have sort of across the board, to get some plain fast growing ones and some pretty fast growing ones as well. But the plainer ones do seem to be the ones that really go there, But it's trying to get something of everything. So every fishery would like to have a variation of
absolutely
different looking
fantastic
fish, basically.
Yeah, no, beautiful. I think I'd like to take him home. He's beautiful.
It'd be lovely when
that.
That fish gets to sort of 30 plus. It'd be a sought after fish, wouldn't it?
Yeah, without a doubt. Fantastic. Well, I look forward to seeing them when they're on my unhooking mat a bit bigger.
Yeah, this time next year, hopefully they'll be a pound and a half. And
4 or 5 years' time, proper big ones.
Yeah, hopefully some of them will be pushing through 20 pound by then.
Fantastic.
We hope that this film has given you some useful information on how to improve your catches, utilising the benefits of the latest innovative thinking on rig design from one of the UK's most respected anglers. Ultima's dedication to innovation and development is well known, and it's this commitment that has helped to make them recognised around the world as being at the very forefront of line performance and technology. Ultima believe in giving anglers as much knowledge as they can, so there's much more in-depth information on all the rigs covered on this DVD on the Ultima website, plus a huge amount of additional information useful to all anglers, including comprehensive knot and line care sections, together with a search facility to find your nearest Ultima stockist. You will have noticed that throughout the film the guys have been wearing some of the items from the great range of Ultima clothing. These high-quality items are now available to purchase directly from Ultima's online merchandise store, and with a very special promotional offer for people who have watched this film. Go to the merchandise section of the online store, enter the promotion code PC2311 in the promotional code box, and you will get very special prices, plus a free bonus item.
Right, okay. DVD sadly is coming to an end. Really enjoyed, being involved in the DVD and having, such an input on the rig side. Hopefully you guys, no matter what level of carp angling you're at, will glean some information. There's rigs for beginners, there's rigs for intermediate, there's rigs for hardcore carp anglers, showing you how to incorporate the products using the right sort of length Hooklink and the right hooks. And generally, like I say, it's a funny subject, rigs. It's something that everybody's interested in. Whenever I do a show or that sort of thing, that is the topic of conversation, and that's why we've put this DVD together. So hopefully in a format that you can follow and incorporate into your angling. Hopefully making your photo albums a lot bigger than they were and catching PBs. I'm certainly enjoying myself at Ultima, and I hope you enjoyed the DVD, and I'll see you on the next one, hopefully.